You wanted the best, you got the best. The hottest podcast in the world, My Mom's Basement. Hello and welcome to the Halloween edition of My Mom's Basement with Robbie and Mike Fox. This is my older brother, if you haven't seen him or if you don't recognize him. Because if you're watching on YouTube and not just listening on the podcast feed, we're all done up for Halloween. I'm Gene Simmons, he's Peter Chris, and today we are going to be talking about Kiss. This is pretty awesome.
Yeah, man, we had to. We talked about this so many years ago about doing it, and something about Halloween gets me in that let's get painted up like freak spirit. And who better to get painted up as than the hottest band in the world?
Well, I was going to say, this is my first time ever wearing Kiss face paint my entire life, which is actually kind of surprising considering the Kiss fan, the member of the Kiss army that I am, but it's not your first time. This is what, your third, is it, or second?
Okay, so it's my second. It should have been my third, and we'll get to that. But I dressed as Gene for Halloween in fifth grade. I was 10 years old. I had seen them close out the VMAs, and we should get to that too, because that was sort of the genesis, the birth of everything that wound up happening in my whole life. But let's fast forward all the way to 2011. I have a residency at a club in Hoboken, New Jersey, playing drums with the DJs every week on a Friday or a Saturday. I think it alternated. I would set up the drums next to the turntables and just blast all night, a la Travis Barker DJ AM. It was a really great time. And the club owner told me, hey, we've got Halloween party coming up. And light bulb went off. Big flash pot went off in my head. I said, you know what? Now is the time to put on the whiskers, and I'm going to be playing drums. I'm going to be Peter, so I could play and have this great time at this Halloween party and play as Peter. I mean, lifelong dream to be slamming on the tubs with the whiskers on. Took it one step further, called Uncle Dennis and Aunt Deirdre and said, hey, Halloween party in Hoboken, I'm playing, and I'm going to be Peter. But what if you guys are Gene and Paul? And I talked to my wife, sweetheart that she is, into being Ace. And I said, let's all go. When I play, I'll play. And when I'm not, we'll just walk around and we'll be Kiss. It'll be awesome. So we got to work on the costumes, and we started, and we're painting, and we're gluing, and we're cutting, and we're getting it all together. Fast forward to the night of this party. So Halloween 2011, there's like a blizzard rolls in.
Yeah, I remember it.
And it started to look sketchy, like, whoa, this is pretty gnarly. I don't know if this gig's gonna happen or not. But I said, I gotta get painted up. I gotta get going here. And I had a Peter costume, and on the thighs of the Peter costume were these big cutouts on the outsides of the thighs. Now, I'm a hairy dude. My legs are covered in hair. And I'm thinking this is gonna be a bad look to show up with like all this jungle fur popping out of these cutouts where these leg holes are. So, you know, what else can you do? You grab the trimmers, and I just shaved my thighs, man.
Shaved those thighs, yeah.
On both sides where the cutouts were, so that they were, you know, nice and smooth and sexy, ready to rock. And just about as I was done shaving the hair off of two patches of my thighs, the phone rings, and it was the club saying, hey, blizzard, party's canceled, sorry. And then, you know, everything pretty much shut down, and I remember saying to my wife, come on, let's just walk up the block to the liquor store and get some drinks, because we're snowed in on Halloween. I'm bummed because I don't get to play the gig. I loved playing gigs. I'm bummed because I don't get to play as Peter. I'm bummed that all this prep work went into becoming Kiss for this Halloween party. And I remember distinctly like marching with an angry purpose up the street through the snow, and me sort of in silence and my wife sort of in silence, just kind of disappointed at the whole situation. And then I said out loud on Kingsland Ave in Lyndhurst, New Jersey, I shaved my thighs for this. It took a while for it all to grow back to it. It was one of those things.
I could imagine. Actually, I sent our Uncle Dennis a photo of me as soon as I got the makeup done. I didn't want to spoil it for you. I wanted the reaction to be genuine, but I sent him a picture, and the first thing he said was, ask Mike if he shaved his thighs again for this. First thing he texted me. So funny.
He would tease me sometimes, just randomly, occasionally, for years to come. He would just look at me and go, "I shaved my thighs for this."
There's a shirt. There's like a famous shirt. I think they wear it in the league, that fantasy football shirt that says, "I shaved my balls for this." We need you to get just a custom shirt. "I shaved my thighs for this." Would the initial Gene Simmons dress up that you had, was that your favorite Halloween costume? Before we get into Kiss, like favorite Halloween costumes.
Yeah, definitely, because there was just something about, like, that time period. They were on the reunion tour. So they had just put the makeup back on with all four original members. And I was the only fifth grader who was like, knew about this, was into this. And, any Halloween where you show up and you're the only person as that costume, it's exciting because you feel like, I'm not like everybody else. And that's, I guess the greatest way to describe Kiss is they're not like anything else you've ever seen. They wanted to be the band they never saw on stage, and they became that band
Absolutely. So let's
almost
get into
50
Kiss.
years ago.
Yes, a long time ago. Let's get into Kiss and our fandom of Kiss, our enlisting in the Kiss army, as they say. What was your first time seeing Kiss?
Okay, so it's really weird for me. Growing up, on the way home from school, we would pass by a house around the corner from where we grew up. And in the basement window, at the bottom of the house, in the basement window, there was a poster that faced out.
Hmm.
And it was these faces, just these four faces, and this red logo that I couldn't even quite make out. And I remember asking Mom one day, like, "Hey, what's with that poster over there?" And she said, "Oh, that's Kiss." And I said, what's Kiss?" She said, "It's a rock and roll band. That's a guy I went to high school with. He's a big Kiss fan." And it was sort of very mysterious and intriguing to me that somebody cared enough about this band who, looked very strange with their faces all painted up like ghouls or something, that they cared enough to put the poster up in their basement to face out. This guy wanted everyone to see who this was.
Yeah.
So years later, there was something on VH1, and I caught a glimpse of it again. And I was at Grandma's house, actually. And she said, "Oh, that's that band Uncle Kevin likes." And I was just like, I looked up to Uncle Kevin as the musician of the family. I thought it was so cool. And so he liked them. Immediately, I need to know what this was all about.
Of course.
So then, not long after that, 96 reunion tour. Like I said, four original members putting the makeup back on after a long time not wearing the makeup and not doing the big circus show. And they get booked to close the MTV Video Music Awards that year. So I love the VMAs. Every year I would love to watch the bands, and specifically the drummers. And I just kind of always had a fascination with live music with live drummers. Our uncle played, our dad played. We had musicians in the family. There were drums in the basement at Grandma's. I used to be able to go tinker around with. So, at the top of the VMAs every year, they show you, tonight featuring performances by, and they would show a little picture or video of each band. And at the very end, then they said, "in a very special performance from under the Brooklyn Bridge by Kiss." And they showed them. And I felt my heart like skip a beat, and like this buzz of adrenaline hit me. I'm going to get to see Kiss play. Like, all I knew were these faces and something I saw on TV briefly. And one of our uncles is into that. And fast forward to the end of the show, and they cut to Under the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City. And Paul Stanley, the singer, says, "There's only one rock and roll national anthem: rock and roll all night and party every day." And the band kicks in, and it's fireworks, and it's unlike anything I've ever seen in my life. And at 10 years old, from that very moment on, I knew what I wanted to do with my whole life. I watched this band sing, "I want to rock and roll all night and party every day." And I said, "Yeah, me too. That's it. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play drums in a rock and roll band, and I'm going to try to be a part of something that makes people feel the way I feel right now, because I feel like everything is possible. Everything is right at your fingertips. And I've never seen anything like it. And, I was hooked. It was, like I said, like a month or two later, I was Gene for Halloween. I'm talking to Uncle Kev. He's got old scrapbooks, old VHS tapes. And all of a sudden, I just immersed myself, like first ballot. Where do I sign up? Kiss Army member, 10 years old.
And they're the perfect band to hook a 10-year-old. Like when you look at Kiss, they look like larger than life superheroes or super villains, whether you look at them that way or the other. And their stage show is unlike anything in the history of rock and roll to this day. Their stage show is crazy. On the 10th farewell tour that they're currently on, they're putting on a crazy show where they're coming from the ceiling. They've got panels, explosions, fire, all of that. Gene's breathing fire and everything. Like they're the perfect band to grab you when you're little. And then the fans that stick with Kiss, they truly stick with them. They're truly an army. They go to the shows painted like Kiss. They buy so much merchandise that you would think it's like for Star Wars. Honestly, like I would compare Kiss merchandise to Star Wars merch, and with that, you're like, they make that like for everything. There's a Kiss it's like Spaceballs, Kiss the flamethrower. They've got that. I guarantee it. So, what was your first time actually seeing Kiss live in the flesh?
Okay, so a few years later, it's the year 2000, and Kiss is going on their farewell tour. So 22 years ago, they're going on their farewell.
Is this technically the first farewell tour they did as well?
Technically the first farewell tour, yeah. And it was like panic set in, because it was just like, oh, this is it. This is my one chance. This is, I gotta go. So called our uncles, asked mom and dad's permission, got the green light, had a hookup for tickets at the Meadowlands. So we wound up with great seats, and we go. And what's funny is we were sort of like first row down up against the barricade that separates the seats from the floor. And I was right on the end, right on the aisle. And then like I feel someone kind of like shove me in, and I look, and it's Jesse Camp. Do you know who Jesse Camp is?
No.
Okay. MTV had a contest, and I want to be an MTV VJ contest.
And this VJ?
A video jockey.
Gotcha.
And this dude won. And so he was like sort of like recent quasi celebrity. People knew him. He won the first ever VJ contest. The big, tall, rock and roll looking dude. And I look, and there he is. So also, if Jesse Camp is here because he wants to see Kiss, it felt like, it felt like an army. It felt like a family. It felt like we all know about something that's very cool, and we're here to do it together. So, lights go down, and you wanted the best. You got the best. The hottest band in the world, Kiss. And bam, the curtain drops, and they are coming down from the ceiling, and it's fireworks, and they're playing Detroit Rock City. And, once again, it was reaffirming what I had already seen on TV, but it was like that feeling cranked up to 1,000, where it was just like, this is the greatest thing you can do with your life.
Oh yeah.
Is go be larger than life, and play awesome music, and have all these people just, like we are right now, people with their faces, people like, pledging allegiance to this band. And luckily enough, as fate would have it, they filmed that show, my first concert I ever went to. They filmed that show for a pay-per-view special, and later released it on a DVD. And so like, how lucky for me to be able to, whenever I want to, this is pre-YouTube also. So whenever I want to throw that disc in, I actually had it on bootleg on VHS before
wow.
the DVDs came out. To have this pro shot pay-per-view quality footage of this concert. And I can almost get teary-eyed just talking.
I know. I was thinking back to my first time seeing Kiss. You taking me to see Kiss, a Live 35 tour. And when they first hit the "You wanted the best, you got the best," and there's just that like droning sound going over the whole arena, you get the chills, and you almost feel like I was getting choked up. Like I remember sitting there at MSG, like I can't believe I'm about to see Kiss, like getting choked up. And I also want to kind of go back to you introducing me to Kiss before we get to that point, because you introduced me to Kiss at a super young age. Some would say too young, I'm sure. And I was into Kiss from as long as I could remember, really. There's pictures of me as a 3-year-old with my Kiss action figures, my Kiss stuffed animals, my Kiss Legos that you got me, the whole Lego set and everything. And they was Kiss, Motley Crue, and Guns N' Roses. And one of the early things about Kiss that set them apart for me was that they had a Scooby Doo special where it was Kiss meets Scooby Doo, and I had the VHS and everything. And then they also had Kiss Expos, which were this mysterious event to me as a small kid. What is a Kiss Expo? You would go yearly. You went a couple years in a row, I think,
Yeah.
and you would come back and you would tell me it's just a place where they set out all Kiss toys, all Kiss shirts, merchandise, all Kiss fans go, and then at the end of the night, you see a Kiss tribute band. You see someone, 4 people that go all out with the paint, all out with the costumes, and in some cases are pretty damn good. There's some pretty damn good Kiss tribute bands out there.
Yeah.
And my first Kiss Expo, I remember that being one of my favorite concerts I've ever been to. It was a band called Kisteria. That was the name of the tribute band. And going there, it was basically my first Comic Con. That's what I would compare it to, like a smaller Comic Con. Everyone's got booths set up. Every now and then they would have like a former member of Kiss, sometimes a current member, like Eric Singer would go or something like that. But I remember you going to a Kiss Expo before I was old enough to go to one and getting the Address to Kill shirt. And me taking that and being like, one day I will be at the Kiss Expo. Oh, I will be. Those were so much fun. And I can't think of any other band other than maybe like the Grateful Dead or something, or the Beatles, literally, that would have something like that. A Kiss Expo, Comic Con, solely dedicated to Kiss and their merchandise, because oh my God, there's merchandise. There's toys up the wazoo. I used to have toys. You got me for Christmas one year, and we still actually have the video of you giving it to me for Christmas. It's the full Kiss stage, and it wasn't Lego, but it was figures that looked very much like Lego. Very
Yeah.
cool figures.
Yeah, I remember this.
And how I would play with them, and you would help me out with this, is we would get a bunch of pieces of construction paper, all different colors. We would get mom's little paper cutter that, goes up and down like that, cut them into a million fine pieces, and then go on YouTube or go to the CD player, or probably not YouTube at that point, iTunes or the CD player, hit play, and then just rain confetti on the Legos as we played with them. And, that's not the way a kid usually plays, I don't think. I think it's like superhero and, wrestlers and stuff like that, which I also had, but it was also just Kiss. There was something about them that set them apart. And then we get to a Live 35, my first opportunity to see the band. They're touring the 35th anniversary of their live album, Alive, one of the greatest live albums of all time, if not the greatest. And you were kind of working at MSG at the time, or had been working at MSG. So we went in through like the employee entrance, or the back entrance.
Yeah.
Who do we see 5 minutes into getting it to MSG but Gene Simmons?
The demon.
The full Gene Simmons too, in the full face paint. He's got the hair done. He's in the costume. He's walking with his wife Shannon, who you may know as well. She, from the reality show, from Playboy, all that. They're walking, and it's like, oh shit. How old am I at this point? I'm probably less than 10. I would have to assume I was 8 or 9. And we run up to them, and it's like, you were like, get the camera ready, get the camera ready, get the digital camera ready, right? No phones, cameras at this point. And you're like, Gene, can the little guy get a picture or something? And I'll never, ever forget this. Gene Simmons gets a lot of flack, so let me tell a good Gene Simmons story for him. His handler said, we do not have time. I'm sorry, guys, absolutely not. And Gene stopped, and Gene took that picture, and I'll flash it on the screen for everyone to see now. Bit of a blurry picture. Didn't get the digital camera right in time.
It's because you guys were like sort of moving as it, like, he didn't want to break stride, and I'm like, you got to just jump in there and I'm like, snap it quick. And
that's me and Gene though. And you know what? That was a pretty fucking cool moment for a little kid to see. Okay, this is one of my heroes that I grew up playing with his action figures, and he's in the full fucking action figure garb. He looks like the action figure right now.
And he didn't blow you off, even though the handler already tried to blow you off.
Exactly. He gave him the out. The handler gave him the, hey guys, sorry, we don't have time. Gene has to go to whatever. And he didn't blow me off, and he took the picture. And I've always thought, when, Gene gets a lot of flack, people say one of the biggest douchebags in rock and roll or whatever. I always think back to that, and I go, well, you know what? It's pretty damn cool to me.
Yeah.
Awesome moment. And that was an awesome show as well. That's one of those shows that I always think back to. I think I still somewhere have a little sandwich bag, a little plastic baggie that has confetti that I caught in the air that night and took home because I wanted to always, keep that. Pretty crazy that no other bands really that delivers for me. It was Kiss, Motley Crue, Guns N' Roses growing up, but Kiss was without a shadow of a doubt the number one. Let me ask you this, Mike. Off the top of your head, could you tell me how many Kiss members there have been over the years?
Oh man, off the top of my head.
I looked it up and I was surprised. There's more than I thought.
Okay, hold on. Quick math. For 14.
There's been 10 official members and then 2 touring members that played keyboards on like 3 tours in the 80s.
Okay.
The official 10, the original 4, Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons, Ace Frehley, and Peter Criss. And then you've got Eric Carr, Vinnie Vincent, Mark St. John, Bruce Kulick, Tommy Thayer, and Eric Singer. Now, let me ask you as a drummer. Kiss is one of these bands that have gone through members and people have criticized them for it. We see it now happening in Motley Crue. John Five stepping in for Mick Mars in a different capacity. He's not putting on Mick Mars face paint and whatnot and going on stage as Mick Mars. As a drummer yourself, how would you describe the differences in the 3 Kiss drummers?
Well, it took me a long time to realize how important Peter Criss, specifically his style of drumming, was to this band and what sets them apart. A lot of people like to make comments, jokes, cracks about Kiss not really being good musicians. Nothing could be further from the truth. This is a bass player.
Absolutely.
Peter grew up influenced by jazz and big band and swing, Gene Krupa, Buddy Rich, things like that. And it really influenced the way he played. And, here's this guy who is into jazz and swing and big band and stuff like that, gets into this rock and roll band and continues to play the way he plays. Now he's playing rock and roll grooves and rock and roll beats, but there's something about the way it actually does swing.
It swings, it does.
And I mean, perfect example, listen to Detroit Rock City. Listen to the drums in the verses of Detroit Rock City. He's really swinging and bouncing, and it gives it a certain type of feel that's not just this like crushing, stompy, marchy, ga 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 ga. A lot of the rock beats, that you would typically hear on rock and roll music. It's very, tends to be straight ahead and just kind of, plodding along. Peter puts the roll in rock and roll, and Eric Carr takes over for him, and Eric is a great drummer, but stylistically nothing like Peter. Very much more of your traditional rock guy, just crushing the beats, marching forward and driving. Eric Singer, I would say, is probably somewhere between Peter Criss and Eric Carr in terms of style. Probably leans a little bit more towards Eric Carr in terms of driving rock beats rather than swinging rock beats the way Peter was. But
also talented too. Like Kiss has had so many members over the years. They've had a lot of different guitar players. Obviously, I feel the guitar players are not nearly as memorable as the 3 drummers.
Yeah, and you know what? A big part of Peter and eventually Eric Carr and Eric Singer is that they all sang well too. This is one of those bands. They're like the Beatles. Every member sings, and every member's got a distinct style to the way they sing. And every member's a personality. And, Peter's got one of the greatest voices in the history of rock and roll.
Peter arguably has my favorite voice in the band. Like that raspiness, that Rod Stewart almost in his voice is so good. And it's so different for different songs. Like you can't picture Gene Simmons singing Beth. That's just like, I laugh out loud thinking about that. But his voice is so perfect for it. Black Diamond, his voice is so perfect for it. It's just a straight up hard rock song. And I'm glad you brought up the chirps about Kiss, because especially I feel like as a 24-year-old Kiss fan, sometimes I'll tweet something about Kiss, like If you didn't like Kiss, fuck you, something like that. And someone will be like, oh, they didn't have any skill, any musician skill. Gene Simmons is such an unbelievable bass player that I just roll my eyes at it. It doesn't even annoy me at this point because I'm like, you know what? That's a shame that you're not familiar with enough Kiss to make those comments. I think our Uncle Kevin calls him like the hard rock McCartney. In some of his bass lines, and a lot of his bass lines, you hear that McCartney influence, you hear that Beatles influence, and you hear the big band influence. Gene talks about a lot of his parts as if they're trumpet parts. He's like, I think what would the horns play? And I throw that in there. As a bass player too, I can't play a lot of Kiss songs. Guess what? I don't really have those issues with Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue and some of the other bands I grew up with. And that's not to throw shade on, Duff or Nicky, because they're both incredible. Duff especially has songs that I can't play. But Gene has this distinct style where you hear it in Detroit Rock City, you hear it in Deuce, you hear it in so many different songs where he does that McCartney thing and he plays with the melody and he's hitting the perfect notes and he's keeping his fingers moving the entire song. And you know what? Maybe Kiss has also given into that um, narrative, I guess, because I remember talking to one of Gene's handlers when I met them on the final tour. And he was like, yeah, they make those self-deprecating jokes all the time. They're like, yeah, we'll have someone else in these face paint outfits and everything in a couple of years. When we're long gone, Kiss will still be here. And I think that might be true. I think they might be the first. I know there's been like cover bands that franchise. They might be the first band that just franchises.
I hope they do.
I hope they do too. I would go see him. People give him a lot of shit, especially in the last tour. They say maybe Paul was lip syncing some of it, backing tracks. I saw him twice on the final tour, and in my mind, I was like, you know what? If this truly is it for Kiss, they're really getting up there in age. I think Gene is in his 70s, right? Paul's up there. I said, if this is truly it, I bet I'll have a good time at their show. I went to two and I had a great time. Like Kiss just brings the energy, even if they are 70 years old up there. I had a really good time at my last two Kiss shows.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen them 4 times. The first time with the original members, and each time since with Tommy and Eric. And every time it's what it really comes down to is, of course, you're getting this great show. You're getting every dollar's well spent, and it's the songs. I mean,
Yeah.
when you really break it down, it's great rock songs. And for everybody who thinks Kiss is just this circus and they can't play their instruments, I've got a dozen songs I could play you that I'm sure, as a music lover, as a rock and roll lover, you would say, holy shit, this is a great song.
Yeah.
Occasionally I'd run this experiment and I would put Hard Luck Woman on in a room full of people. And not once did I ever do this where somebody didn't go, hey, who's this? And I say, this is Kiss. And they're like, this is Kiss? And it's just like, yeah, they wrote great music. People discarded them as these weirdos who just spit blood and blow things up and can't play their instruments. But so much good music, and played by 4 guys who really, Ace Frehley. How many guitar players play guitar because of Ace? They can tell you.
Totally.
Because of Kiss, it's because of Ace Frehley. I wanted to be a guitar player.
The fireworks on the headstock. Oh my God, that's one of the most iconic pyrotechnic routines in all of rock and roll. The blood spitting obviously is too. The firehouse, Paul putting the fire helmet on. There's so many things too. Peter's drum riser going up. So many things that you associate with a Kiss show where you're like, how could you not fucking love that? I do feel bad for people that didn't grow up Kiss fans, because this is like rock and roll on steroids. This is the WrestleMania of rock and roll, going to a Kiss show. This is like, you will be mind blown. I took Glennie Balls to a Kiss show. That was my last Kiss show. I said, Glennie, let's go see Kiss. And he, out of all the songs, he goes, oh my God, I love I Was Made for Loving You. That was the first thing he said to me. And I was like, oh yeah, let's go see Kiss. He came. He had a blast. He was like, this is incredible. Paul's still doing the love gun rappel across the arena to the small stage and everything. We actually, this is, you know what? I wasn't even going to bring this up, but it just crossed my brain. We went to a Paul Stanley art gallery in the mall just to get a glimpse of the guy. We were like, and that's basically what it was. We showed up, we waited online for hours. They let us in. We saw some of Paul Stanley's paintings, some of which were okay, some of which were not. And then I think from a distance, we were like, oh my God, I waved to Paul and maybe he saw a kid and waved back. And that was like, oh my God, what a cool day.
Yeah.
That's how much we were obsessed. Some things that are My Mom's Basement and Kiss related that I want to bring up. Kiss had some Marvel comic books in the late 70s, and there was a very interesting thing about these comic books. It was one Marvel super special, and then I think they had some afterwards. In the super special, they battled Mephisto, Doctor Doom, like actual Marvel villains. They teamed up with Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four was there. But what the true talking point of this comic book is that Kiss mixed their blood into the red ink used in the comics.
Yeah.
And they threw this out there as an idea. And Kiss always had these outlandish, extravagant ideas. And they were like, should we do it? That seems even a little out there for us. And they said, nah, fuck it, let's do it. And to make sure everyone knew that they were serious about this, they actually did it in on Long Island. I almost said in Long Island. On Long Island at the Nassau Coliseum. They had a notary and a cameraman show up, and they all got their blood drawn, and then they poured it into, what would eventually become the red ink there. And they did it all in costume, all in face paint, because at this point, they were still in kayfabe. That's another thing about Kiss where I feel like people probably couldn't even imagine it nowadays with social media and everything. But they were truly in character, like they were the Undertaker 24/7. They weren't spotted without makeup for years. When they eventually took it off, it was such a big deal that they did a TV special. And you could look it up, you could watch it on YouTube. There's a great like opening where they're like Gene Simmons, the demon, the scariest, the bloodsucker, whatever. And then it just fades into like Gene's normal face. And then you're like, oh yeah, he's just kind of an old guy, Gene Simmons Family Jewels style. And they do it for each member. That's a great special as well. That's like worth looking up if you've never seen it. So the Marvel comic books I wanted to bring up. And then another thing that I would say is basement related. Kiss actually made a movie in the late 70s. I think it was late 70s, right? Not the 80s yet.
Late 70s. Yeah.
Right off the heels of Star Wars, they make a movie called Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park. And this movie was, I think, intended to be Star Wars. They were like, you know what? Let's put out our own fucking Star Wars. It was not Star Wars. This is an all-time so bad it's good movie, at least for us. And I remember the VHS tape like it was yesterday, how tattered and worn the box of this VHS was. We watched it all the time. It's so bad that there are scenes in it where I think Ace Frehley and maybe Peter, but definitely Ace, were on drugs for the filming of it, and they were a little messed up for it. And they couldn't get him to remember lines. They couldn't get him to show up to set every day. So sometimes you see a stunt double for Ace Frehley, and folks, it's a black guy. It doesn't even look anything like him. Like you could tell immediately, like you're like, that's a black guy in Ace Frehley paint. But it is so worth at least looking up on YouTube and watching some highlights of. I don't know if you could find the full thing on YouTube. I'm sure you could find it online. It is so funny to look back at and look at the special effects and see what they were going for with the special effects, see what they achieved. It's worth checking out.
It's Hanna-Barbera who did the Scooby-Doo cartoons. So this was, it feels like they tried to make an episode of Scooby-Doo come to life.
Yes.
And, I mean, they sort of did. And it turns out, I don't know if we need Scooby-Doo to come to life.
No, and especially without the dog. Yeah.
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 So yeah, it's like you said, it's one of those so bad it's good. I watch it still to this day because
I was going to say you showed it to your kids this year, which I think is so funny. Just like if you're thinking of showing it to your kids, it's not inappropriate. It's not like it's going to scare them or anything like that. They're just going to be bored as hell. I'll tell you what. This is not the most entertaining action sequence movie.
But in a pre-YouTube world, any footage I have of Kiss playing music on a stage or doing anything, I'll watch it.
It's and there is like a different version of Beth in the movie, right? There's a different version of Beth. There's like some cool scenes at the end. It's interesting too where Kiss went into pop culture, especially in my lifetime, because being born in '98, I'm born at the tail end of Kiss, if you even want to call it that, where it's like they're still in pop culture here and there. They were in Tony Hawk's Underground, is what I'm referring to. Like that was the final level of Tony Hawk's Underground. You collect the KISS letters, and Kiss starts playing, and Gene you could play as and everything. It's interesting how long they were around in that area. I mean, at one of the Kiss expos, I bought a Kiss toothbrush, and it played Rock and Roll All Night and Party Every Day. And when it was over, you knew, okay, that's when you're done brushing your teeth. Like, it's crazy how long they were able to stay almost Beatles-like up in the pop culture zeitgeist.
Yeah, it's they tapped in at a time when they were able to set themselves apart
Yeah.
from everything else that was going on. And I said it once, I'll say it 100 times. They wrote great songs. To this
That's what it
day,
comes down to more than anything.
we listen to Kiss all the time. I mean, I have kids right now who are 8 and 4, and they say, "Can we listen to Kiss when we get in the car?" And the answer to that is always going to be yes.
Always. Another movie before we get into, we're going to draft our top 5 most underrated songs. But another movie I wanted to bring up, an actual good movie, I would say, is Detroit Rock City. A movie was made about 4 guys wanting to go see a Kiss show and their journey getting there. Late 90s, early 2000s, I would say.
Yeah, it sounds right.
Probably early 2000s. And this is another one of my favorite movies growing up, even though I probably shouldn't have been watching it when I initially
Definitely
did.
shouldn't have been watching this. No.
Especially based on the DVD cover is like, the drawing of everyone in the movie. There's the drawing of, all 4 members of Kiss, all the various characters. There's some cameos and whatnot. It feels like a Kevin Smith movie to me. It feels in the same vein, kind of like if you were like, all right, a View Askew universe movie of 4 guys wanting to go see Kiss. There's even the guy who looks a little bit like Jay with the long hair and the beanie.
Yep.
I would recommend this to people. I would say, especially if you're a Kiss fan and haven't seen this, it's like almost a must watch because it goes through the tropes of like calling into a radio station while you're in school trying to win tickets, people dealing with the Kiss versus rock and roll rivalry of the time, which always one of the grossest things of all time is when he throws the pizza, the way it like winds up on the windshield always just grossed me out. But check out Detroit Rock City if you haven't before, because I think that's like really worth a watch. That's a sleeper good movie.
Yeah, totally. And, really captured the vibe of like 70s Kiss because it's taking place in the 70s. And it really,
The main character's mother is like part of the church and she doesn't want him listening to it. There's the opening scene is so classic where it's like an old woman getting down with a glass of wine or something, and
yeah,
she goes to put a record on the record player. And if you're in tune to Kiss and you know what their records look like with the Casablanca logo, she's putting on the wrong record that was put in, a normal sleeve. And then Detroit Rock City hits. I think it was like Destroyer. And of course, we now have to talk about our most underrated Kiss songs. Now, this was interesting to put together a list of underrated Kiss songs, especially because of how diehard the fans are. I was going back and forth. What's underrated? What's not underrated? I think I'm pretty happy with my list. I would be shocked if we had any crossover on our lists.
okay.
I would be shocked. Would you like to kick it off with your 5, or would you like me to kick it off?
I'll kick it off. No particular order. I grabbed these 5 because
I pretty much have no particular order as well.
find myself just constantly going back to them and listening to them over and over again. From my favorite Kiss record, the second record, Hotter Than Hell. It's the last song on the record. It's called Strange Ways. It's a song that Peter sings. It's just that whole record, Hotter Than Hell, is so dirty and grungy sounding. It's almost like pre-grunge.
Yeah.
It's just got this New York City street vibe to it. I mean, and it makes sense. These guys, 4 guys from the streets in New York City. And it's just, it sounds dirty. It feels dirty.
The whole record is so raw. I was listening to a little bit of it earlier, just looking for my top 5 and everything. And there's a noticeable like quality drop in the recording quality of this record and other records. And it's not in a bad way. Like weirdly, it feels like it's recorded cheaper, but in a like rock and roll way.
Yeah, it's got a punk rock rawness and feel to it. So, like we said before, the rasp in Peter's voice, that Rod Stewart sound, and it's a dark tune, and it's just sludgy and heavy and punk and raw, and that's one of my most underrated. Strange Ways.
That's a great one. And at the end of this podcast, I'm going to make a Spotify playlist for the people out there with all 10 of our most underrated songs. So if you want to dive deep into them, I'll make that easy for everyone. My first one, this is going to be possibly a little controversial because I'm picking a single as my first most underrated song, which you might say, like, that's weird. You're picking a single, underrated. I'm going with Modern Day Delilah off Sonic Boom. This was the second to last Kiss album. They released one called, I think, Monster after this, which was horrendous. But there's actually some decent songs on Sonic Boom, and I'm considering it especially underrated because it's kind of the lost album. This was released, I think, in 2012. with a Walmart partnership where the only place you could go to buy the CD was Walmart. Now, that was pre-streaming taking over and everything, and they didn't anticipate the fact that you would not be able to put this album on streaming because Walmart has the exclusive rights or whatever. So they finally put it on streaming last year, or this year actually, the beginning of this year, 2022, and I figured, oh, the 10-year gap must be over. Now I could listen to the record over again. Modern Day Delilah being the lead single from it. It's a great song. It's got Paul, it's got Gene, it's hard, it's great. The album is now yet again not on Spotify, iTunes, anywhere to be found. So they must have not read the fine print there. Walmart still owns it in some way. It's a bit of a lost album, but this is a badass song. I think it's maybe like the last truly great Kiss song released.
Great riff. Great riff. Gets you tapping your foot. Great drum
Yeah.
beat.
And it reminds me of that first show, too, because they played Modern Day Delilah the first time I ever saw Kiss. They were promoting that album, kind of. So it does have a nostalgic feel for me.
Very good choice.
You're number 4.
Or
not, okay, not 4, but the countdown. Back to you.
Yeah, from Destroyer. And I figure this is going to be probably amongst real Kiss fans, probably a fan favorite, but not something that ever gets played live, not something that ever gets talked about very much, but I just love it so much. Flaming Youth from Destroyer.
I love Flaming Youth.
Yeah, see what I mean? It's just that, that riff in the beginning, singing about, being young and being crazy. My parents think I'm crazy and they hate the things I do. I mean, who can't relate to that when they're young and want to be?
What Kiss fan can't relate to that?
Yeah.
That's a great one. My next one is off Carnival of Souls, The Final Sessions. This is, for those that don't know, an unpainted Kiss album. They're with the bare faces, and this is their shot at a grunge album in the 90s. You see a couple bands like Motley Crue, who we've discussed in the past on this podcast, go towards that grunge route, and it worked for some, and it didn't work for others. I would say for Motley, it worked so well. That MC94 record we talked about extensively on our Motley Crue podcast as one of our favorites. It is so badass. It holds up so well. It goes so hard. Kiss, not so much. I'll be completely honest. Not as good as that MC94 record, but there are some good songs on it. This one particularly being Rain. I love this song. It's real grungy. It's real deep, it's hard, and it's Paul singing it as well. It's a song that you would maybe expect Gene to be on, but this is a Paul song. It's the only Paul song on my list other than Modern Day Delilah. He does sing the verses and everything. This is worth a listen out of pure curiosity if you're like, what does Kiss as a grunge band sound like?
Okay. Speaking of Paul songs, my next pick is a Paul song. And it comes from Rock and Roll Over, one of my favorite riffs in history. It's Mr. Speed.
I know this one. I like this one. Rock and Roll All Over also being one of the best album covers of all time, I think. Yeah,
that opening riff, I mean, it's just got that, it's got a real 70s, almost T-Rex, almost Stonesy kind of feel to it. But, just a great, fun 70s hard rock song with a great riff.
One of the first things I wanted to know about Kiss when I met someone that worked for the band a couple of years ago was he traveled with the band and everything as well. And I said, what do they listen to? Like when they're just throwing music on, what does Kiss listen to nowadays? He said it was a lot of 50s stuff, a lot of Elvis, a lot of Stones, and a lot of Zeppelin. He's like, Elvis, Stones, and Zeppelin are the three. Pretty fucking solid playlist.
Don't go wrong there.
It's all you need, really. My next one is off Dressed to Kill, Kiss's third record. One of the best album. I'm going to say it about every album. One of the best album covers because they do have the best album covers in general. But it's them in the suits. Come on, this is great. Two Timer. I think it's the second song off the album. It's a Gene song, and I looked on Spotify. It might be out of all the songs on that record, the one with the least amount of streams, which shocked me because I love this song and always have.
Yep, Two Timer's great. Gene's got that young, that youth in his voice still.
Yeah.
And, you can still hear how hungry they are on those.
I know, singing about New York streets and everything. Yeah.
those first three records, before Kiss Alive comes out and Rock and Roll All Night becomes mainstream and they blow into the stratosphere, the first three Kiss albums, you really hear how young and hungry they are. And I love that about any band. I love being able to hear how young and hungry they are.
And for people that don't know, Kiss wasn't just an immediate success when they broke through and everything. Like their first album wasn't like this breakthrough, oh my God, everyone's talking about Kiss. It took a while, and really what blew it up was Alive, their live album. They didn't really have the money to record like another studio album, and I think it was almost like shit or get off the pot. Like,
Last ditch effort, Hail Mary,
yeah,
album, yeah.
and they record this live album where still to this day people say, is it really live, is it not live? They went in and fixed some things. Just put that on and enjoy your night, because oh my God, it kicks ass. And it's still, people say it's too much of a crowd noise. The crowd doesn't, the crowd isn't out 100 the entire concert. That's how I want to hear the crowd in a live album. Like that's what I always think back to when they open with Deuce on that and you hear the crowd, people just screaming throughout the entire song. That's what I want a pop punk album, live album to sound like. If we ever record a live album, guess what? We're pumping in that crowd noise.
My 4-year-old daughter, we get in the car, she says, can we listen to Rock and Roll All Night? And I always say, studio version or live version? And she goes, live version.
Like it's no brainer.
I'd be so stupid to ask that question.
And Kiss are one of those bands. Like I go to, they have 4 live albums and a couple other just regular live albums, and I go back to those so often. Alive 3 is so well recorded. There's such awesome recordings in Alive 3. I Was Made for Loving You being one of those. Alive 2 opening with Detroit Rock City. Like these are, if you were to like just give someone a couple Kiss albums and you want them to be a fan of the band, give them Alive 1, 2, and 3. Like how could they not come away from that a fan?
Yeah.
All right, up to you now.
Okay, I gotta look at this list again. I can't unlock my phone because my phone doesn't recognize my face.
I was having that issue, yeah.
So I gotta actually type in my password to look at my list.
I know I wasn't used to that either.
Okay, so from the first album, the self-titled album, Kiss, the song "Let Me Know," which to me is such a throwback to what they grew up loving and were inspired by. It's Beatles, man. This could have been a Beatles song, and it could have been a hit Beatles song.
Yep.
It's a Gene vocal, and like you said with Two Timer, it's that youthful sound. It's that young and hungry, and they're just singing about girls,
which is maybe 50-60% of Kiss songs.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly just about singing about chicks, yeah.
But at the end of this song, it completely makes like this hard left turn into Ace Frehleyville with this crunchy, groovy riff. I mean, the Ace Frehley guitar tone is probably my favorite guitar tone ever of anyone.
It's as good as it gets.
Thick and sludgy and at the same time smooth, and Ace falls down the stairs and does something clever on the way down with the guitar.
Yeah,
it's just it feels like the streets. It feels like the streets in New York City come to life when this dude plays, and I love that tone. So at the end of Let Me Know, they just break into a jam where Ace is just firing away. It's one of my favorite things Kiss has ever done. It's
Ace,
just a jam at the end of a great song already.
When you look down the list, and if you asked 50 super famous rock and roll guitar players, like who inspired you to play guitar, they probably all say Ace. And it's a shame that he's so underrated, because he doesn't appear on lists of like greatest rock and roll guitarists if you always look. And maybe he doesn't have the Jimmy Page skill and whatnot, but like he belongs on those lists because his grooves were so creative. He sung so well while playing them. His solos were so good. Like you said, his tone is flawless, as good as you could ask for. I don't believe he played on my next song, so unfortunately, I'm going with a song he wasn't even on. Off Revenge, one of their 80s albums. This is another one without the face paint. Thou Shalt Not, a Gene song. This one goes fucking hard. And I was reading a little bit on Revenge earlier, and it seemed the band kind of came to an agreement where they were like, all right, Paul's going to get the radio songs, the hit singles, and Gene's going to make the heavy metal songs that like keep the respect there. And this is one of those heavy metal songs. This is as heavy as Kiss gets, I think.
That whole record, that the Revenge, I think it was early '90s, maybe '91 or two. And yeah, they get it. They get heavy on the whole
There's
Revenge.
some good ones on Revenge. I like that album. Is Hearts of Chrome, Heart of Chrome? Is that another one on Revenge?
I think so, yeah.
I think that's on Revenge. That's good. Another good one.
Domino is on Revenge.
Yep.
Um, yeah, it's the first studio recording with Eric Singer on drums.
Wow, I was not aware of that.
Yeah.
I've met Eric Singer. He was one that I met at a Kiss Expo when I was small. I still have an autograph from Eric Singer. Shout out Eric. All right, throwing it over to you.
All right, this is the last one on the list.
Yep.
And if I was ranking them, I might put this at number one. I think it might be the most underrated. Just like I started the list off with, it's from my favorite Kiss album. It's from Hotter Than Hell. It's another Peter vocal. The song is Mainline. I don't know what to say about Mainline that I haven't said about.
It is out there for Kiss, I feel like, but it's a jam.
It's a jam. It's got the Peter vocal. It's got that, punk rock rawness of the recording sound. But it's a pop tune nonetheless.
Yeah.
And maybe
it's
that
catchy too.
That's maybe Kiss's legacy is they just wrote great pop tunes and disguised them as hard rock and heavy metal with volume and attitude. Most of my favorite rock music is just really, it's just that. It's pop tunes disguised with attitude and volume and digging in a little bit. So
yeah, it's the same four chords that all the pop stars use, and you just hit the distortion pedal. That's basically what you do in rock and roll, and that's my favorite as well.
So if you take anything away from this, go listen to Mainline.
This would also be my number one most underrated if I were ranking them. It's off Creatures of the Night, one of my favorite Kiss records, Saint and Sinner.
Oh, wow, I thought maybe you were going to say War Machine, but
I love War Machine, but I felt like that couldn't even be most underrated because I feel like that's not underrated. I feel like people know War Machine is the shit. That was the first video. That was the first song ever put in a YouTube video that I uploaded. It was a video of me playing with Jeff Hardy and Randy Orton action figures to War Machine. I'm going to Saint and Sinner, though. This, to me, when I listen to Creatures of the Night now, I want to hear the Foo Fighters cover Saint and Sinner. This feels like it could be a Foo Fighters song. It sounds modern. Feels like they were pushing shit forward in Creatures of the Night. Just a great record, a badass record, and Saint and Sinner is one of my favorite songs in the whole thing. Another one where on Spotify I had some of the least streams of the whole album, which I was like, what the fuck are people doing listening to this album but not listening to Saint and Sinner? That was our most underrated. And if I were doing one honorable mention, I would do Into the Void off Psycho Circus. Which
Into the Void is actually the only song on Psycho Circus where all four of them are playing together on it.
Which is crazy to me because that is kind of their reunion record, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the only one. Crazy, but that is a good record to me, the Psycho Circus record. I know Kiss fans don't always love it, but that opening, Psycho Circus as a title track is like a badass, one of my favorite Kiss songs, actually.
Yeah. Also, before we wrap this up, I did want to also mention, talking about the music and the great songs, everyone should really check out Kiss's MTV Unplugged. It's one of the best unplugs they've ever.
Great call.
Because you really, just like everybody else who did that Unplugged series, to hear these songs in a stripped down way with acoustic guitars and just, no bombs, no confetti, no blood, no fire, just the music of Kiss being performed as well as it's ever been performed. Really,
the Hard Luck Woman from Unplugged specifically. Oh my God, I go back to all the time.
Going Blind.
Going Blind is so good. Everything off that special. They bring the guys out at the end, bring Peter out and everything. That's it. I would go. I know this. People are going to say, "Oh my God!" I'll go Nirvana Unplugged, Kiss Unplugged.
Wow,
that's my 1-2 right there. I know Alice in Chains. They got some great ones out there. Kiss is my number 2.
Yeah, check out Kiss Unplugged. Check out anything Kiss. Have fun. This is the whole point.
Yeah,
Kiss. Have fun. This is supposed to be fun. We're here once. Let's have a good time.
We're wearing face paint podcasting right now.
Well, by the way, it reminded me of an episode of Family Guy where they go to Kiss Stock. Was that what it was? Right?
Yeah.
And Peter Griffin dresses as Gene, and Lois Griffin dresses as Peter. And Peter says to Lois something to the effect of, Nobody wants to be Peter Criss, not even Peter Criss. And I learned today why that is. It's because this makeup design takes forever to do, and there's a lot of fine moments and parts in there. And this thing is just like, how do
Yeah,
you
I'm
get
I'm
this
proud though because I didn't know what to expect when I didn't do my own makeup. Shout out to our sister did my makeup, and you did your own. So I was like,
I
I
did.
don't know what to expect when I log on to this. Is it gonna look like Peter Chris? I mean, you nailed it.
Well, I can't imagine. I have a newfound appreciation and respect for anybody who ever put on this paint and then went and played. Because by the time I was done, I couldn't imagine having to play a 2-3 hour rock and roll show after. Like, it's exhausting just
Yeah,
sitting there trying to get this right. And I'm sure after a
and they
while,
all do it themselves too. That's one of the things I feel like non-Kiss fans probably don't know. All the guys do their own makeup still to this day. They don't want anyone else touching it.
yeah. And you know what? I spent a lot of time in bands I was in on tour doing some sort of version of face paint, neck paint, something,
I'll
because
throw a picture in here so people could see.
it does, the bands I was in sort of lended to a certain type of look I was doing. And it does, I can vouch for the fact that it does help you get into a mode of being transformed backstage and stepping out onto the stage as something else, something that we're trying to channel and release through us. And you know, I remember being backstage getting painted up for a show, and a drummer from the band we were opening for, he said, Mickey, I gotta ask, what's with the paint? And I said, well, it's a vibe that fits what we're doing. I said, it helps me kind of get into a mode. I said, also, I kind of grew up a big Kiss fan. And his head went down, and he said, Mick, I got to tell you something, man. I fucking hate Kiss. We got along very well, me and this guy, and just the fact that like he felt this was something he needed
To get
me
off his
to know
chest.
about him, like almost as if like, listen, if our relationship is going to continue, you should know this about me. I fucking hate Kiss. I venture to guess that that's because if you know somebody who's into Kiss, you know that they're all
You've
in.
heard a bit too much about Kiss from them. Yeah.
I mean, look at us. What are we
Look at
now?
us. Look,
This?
listen, one of my best friends in the world, Dom, growing up, another drummer, hates Kiss, just absolutely despises them. And I think half of that is due to me being like, we should cover like, War Machine. And he's like, we're not playing War Machine. We're a pop punk band. Stop it. But still to this day, you know what? The pop punk guys have heard more than once. We should do a Halloween show and just dress up as Kiss. And the response I get from all of them is like, oh yeah, sure. And then it's not happening. But if I had a say in the matter, we would do a full Kiss tribute show in Pup Punk. All right, thank you for tuning in, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this. If you're looking more into Kiss, if you want to learn more, there's a documentary on Hulu that Gene and Paul were involved in. The other two guys, original members, were not involved, but it's decent. It'll give you the broad strokes on Kiss, and it's a good entryway to this wild world of Kiss fans, the Kiss Army, all of that. Anything else you want to say about Kiss before we get out of here? I think we covered it all.
No, I think this was great. I can't wait to wash this shit off my face.
Same. You know what? I'm really excited. I had to go park my car, walk to my apartment. Kids were scared. It was, yeah, I'm going to have to go take this off. But thank you to everyone for tuning in. Happy Halloween. I hope you enjoyed. And you know what? We've done a Motley episode. We've done a Kiss episode. Next up, we got to do a Guns one. Sometime in the future, Guns N' Roses.
Sounds good.
All
Happy
right.
Halloween.
Happy Halloween.